And have a seat. If you would pray with me this morning. Lord, I pray that you would be with us this morning, that your Spirit would come and speak to the burdens that we carry, the busyness that crowds our schedules. That you would minister to our souls and give us the rest that we long for. That you would speak to all of us through the words that you speak to Mary and Martha. Amen. Good morning. My name is Richard Bokish. I'm the youth director here at RVF. For those of you that don't know me, just a couple of facts. I'm 25. My wife and I have been married for 5 years as of this July. And in a few weeks, it won't just be the two of us, which is also very exciting. Yes, thank you. I'm doing all the work, so thank you. Do I owe her a blizzard now? Is that how this works? Okay. I'll get you a blizzard. A few months ago, I was with some old friends. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and I decided to suggest that we go around and we share what annoys us the most about each other. We've been friends for a long time, so I was like, let's just stir up the pot a little bit. Like, we haven't had a good argument in a while. I don't know. And they were a little too quick to offer up what annoyed them about me. But it actually was a surprise. It was not at all what I expected. I was expecting, like, you chew your food weird, which my wife would say I do. Is that another blizzard? It's not that you respond late to our messages, which I do. If you text me, expect a response between 2 days to a week. Just, I don't know. The youth kids are aware. If you ask them, they'll ask me a question, and then the next week I'll be like, oh, yeah, sorry. It wasn't that, I don't know, I smell funny or I offended them in some way. It was, you're too busy. You're too busy. Which caught me off guard. Now there was a rule that I'd also given, which was you can't get defensive when we share what annoys us about each other, which is immediately what started to happen inside of me. It's like, what do you mean? I work at a church. I teach high school part-time. I'm married. Neither of them are. Like, what do you... But the rule was I couldn't get defensive. And instead, I just took the moment to feel blessed that I have friends whose biggest annoyance is that they don't have enough of me in their life. You're too busy. And the Screwtape Letters, which, if you're not aware, is a book by C.S. Lewis, which is a conversation between two demonic figures on how to best deceive human beings, how to fight who they call the enemy, which is God. And in this, C.S. Lewis claims that one of the tactics of the evil one is to distract us from God and the life that he has for us by drowning us in a stream of busyness, noise, and incompatible beliefs. Then, to not just drown us out, but then to convince us that that's how life is supposed to be. One of the figures goes on to say, teach him, man, to call this stream real life. Real life. And don't let him ask what he means by real. In other words, keep humans busy with too much, convince them that this is what real life should be like, and don't give them time to stop and ask questions. After doing a bit of research, around 80% of Americans believe that there isn't enough time for all that they have to do in the day, which is something I hear often. It's a feeling that I have often. However, according to studies from last year, even those who work over 8 hours a day still have on average about 5 hours of leisure outside of work, taking care of their families, house chores, taking care of children, on average, 5 hours. Now, some of you might be thinking, that's not true. But just go with me. In addition, even among older generations, the average person spends 5 hours on the internet outside of work. Even amongst older generations, this is not offset. Between the ages of 45 to 65, it's still 5 hours a day. And the internet in some form, whether it's the news, watching TV, social media, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Now, we all know that the internet's bad for us. We all know that it's not good. But one therapist and researcher says that the negative effects of screen time are insidious because you can't see what's happening in your brain as you're staring at the screen. You can't see what's happening in your brain. One pastor and author makes the claim that spiritual formation or discipleship, becoming who Jesus has for us to be, is not just a Christian thing, it's a human thing. We're all being molded, for better or worse, through the complex joys and challenges of life, into a particular kind of person outside of our own awareness. We're not in his control as much as we think we are. And you guys already know this. Just think about when you've had a long day and you come home from work and just the littlest thing happens. We break, we snap, we speak with unkind words, we cope with the weight of the day, we sin. And then once we have a moment to stop, we wonder why we did it all. Like, why did I talk like that? Like, why did I wake up this morning and my wife told me that my shoes didn't match and I was short with her? Why did I do that? You know, as I wake up from not sleeping well and I feel really a lot of pressure, I'm preaching this morning and it's not finished, and why do I do that? Why do we do that? Who we're becoming on a day-to-day basis is already out of our control. When our days are loaded with work and our rest is spent numbing our brains from the weight of the day, we become hurried and anxious and restless. Again, like when I spend half of my Saturday writing a sermon instead of being with my wife, and the few weekends that we have left is just the two of us. The chronic busyness and information overload negatively affects our decision-making and our physical presence with others. And it's a lie from the evil one to distract us from what is real, from what is right in front of us. In fact, psychologists have the term chronic busyness. Chronic busyness is a way many people distract themselves from uncomfortable, unpleasant, and painful emotions. The constant movement and overcommitment actually protect the person from being aware of their emotions. It's a distraction. Now, as Kelly shared a few weeks ago, being busy with God's stuff and being tired from it is a good thing. So in this morning's passage, we're not being told to stop working, to stop meeting our responsibilities. But perhaps the tactic of the evil one is not just to inflict pain on our lives, but also to distract us from it and to numb us. To numb us, because what we ignore is not allowed to heal. It doesn't just want to inflict pain, it wants to distract us from it. And so maybe the evil one has used the lie of this idea of Western productivity to fill our schedules, waste our rest, burden us, and eat at our days so that we're distracted from what is real and true and good and beautiful, from what is sitting right in front of us. We're in a hurry towards more hurry. As Mother Teresa once said, talking about patience, without patience, we learn less in life. We will see less. We will feel less. We will hear less. Ironically, she goes on, rush and more usually mean less. Hurry does not mean more, it means less at more of a cost. And so what are we distracting ourselves from? And maybe the uncomfortable emotions or experiences that we're trying to distract us from are the very places where God slowly and patiently waits for us to meet him. Maybe God moves slower than we do. And so our passage this morning comes right after the story of the Good Samaritan, which comes right after Jesus' conversation about the great commandments, which are, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. And he says, and another is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And this, Jesus says, is the foundation for the law and the prophets, which is biblical shorthand for the Bible. The Bible. On these two commandments rests the entire story of Scripture. Loving God and loving our neighbor are at the very foundation of the unified story of Scripture that is fulfilled in Jesus. As Billy shared last week, the commandment to love your neighbor does not tell us who our neighbor is, but invites us to be neighbors to whoever that God brings to us. It's not who is our neighbor, but who are we a neighbor to, which is everyone. So where do we find that capacity, that room in our schedules to love in this way when our capacities are already overloaded and we're in a hurry? What if the Samaritan's schedule was too full to stop? Now, you guys have heard that righteousness is being in right relationship with God. But all of the laws that Jesus comes to fulfill also show us that having a right relationship with God is intimately connected to our relationship with others. Jesus has come to restore all relationships between all things. And so righteousness is right relationship with God and right relationship with my neighbor. Therefore, our relationships with those we despise is an indicator of our relationship with our Father. And the story of Mary and Martha is part of this series on relationships. Samaritan is a relationship with our neighbor, and this is our relationship with God. So the scene begins at the house of Mary and Martha. Jesus and the disciples are going along their way. Martha opens up her home to them. And then Mary is found sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening intently to his teachings. First of all, it was incredibly strange for Mary to be sitting there. Culturally, it was inappropriate for men and women to share the same space in that way if the women were not serving, when there was a teacher around. Also, the phrase to sit at the feet is a way of saying that that person was a student or a disciple, which was a form of higher education that was not often allowed for women. It's culturally strange, maybe even inappropriate, and weird for Mary to be sitting at the feet of Jesus and Jesus teaching her. Here was Mary becoming a disciple and learning from Jesus himself. Now, I think if we were to ask Martha what annoyed her the most about her sister, we would already know the answer. That she leaves Mary to do all the work. And her complaint actually makes me think that Martha might be the older sister, and if you have siblings, then you know why I might think that. But I imagine, Martha walking up to Jesus. She sees Mary sitting there, which is weird. That's not what women do. They don't become disciples. Maybe she has like a towel on her shoulder, and she puts her hands on her hips, and she's like, "Hey, Jesus, don't you even care that I'm doing all of this work by myself? Mary's sitting there doing nothing. Tell her to come help me." Maybe she snapped, "Hey, Jesus." Maybe Martha was looking out for her sister, protecting her from the embarrassment of crossing a cultural boundary. But also, Martha had a lot of people in her home. Things had to get done. People needed to be fed. The disciples needed food, which means food had to be prepared and cooked and served. There were things to do. Martha, Martha, you're falling apart, worried and concerned about so many things. In the Greek, Jesus' words describe someone who's agitated, overwhelmed, falling apart, and concerned. But Martha's only doing what a good hostess does. Surely Jesus sees that, right? Doesn't Jesus see how hard I'm working? Doesn't he care about all the things that I'm doing, all the ways that I'm providing for these people? Don't my friends see all that I'm doing? So the disciples needed to be fed. Our bills need to be paid, fridges filled, houses warmed, and the lights need to stay on. And so this is where we give all the Marthas, which at any point in time is most of us, but there's also a particular few, credit for keeping things going. For keeping things going. worrying about things that the rest of us don't have to worry about, being concerned about things that the rest of us don't have to be concerned about. But Jesus goes on. He says, the only thing any of us need, your sister has found it. So you mean, while Martha was taking care of everything, doing her best to make sure everyone had everything that they needed, she missed something? And Mary, who's over here, wasting her time at Jesus' feet, is doing what she missed? Despite her best attempts, she missed something, which is frustrating when we try to keep everything together to the best of our ability and it still doesn't work out. We still can't meet all the demands of our schedule. There isn't enough time in the day. So we take it personal and we take it out on others. Martha's response was to pull Mary away from the feet of Jesus. In each of our lives exists a story filled with pains and joys, lies and truths that we tell ourselves about who we are and how things should be. And our chronic busyness is a cultural story that we tell and justify to our habits as a coping mechanism out of fear and pain and worry. And it's at the feet of Jesus that we experience the real story, hear the full truth, and embark on a journey of salvation and healing as his disciples. And so as we look at Jesus' response to Mary, let us look at it not as a rebuke, but an invitation. So now we're at the feet of Jesus. Perhaps one of the reasons why our leisure has become infected with distracting forms of media is because when we slow down, something happens. When we take a moment to breathe, we start to acknowledge the weight that we're carrying of all that we have to do. The anxiety rises into our chest. It's hard to slow down because then we're given a moment to ask questions, to ask what is real. And sometimes it's painful. It's uncomfortable. The anxiety rises when we slow down. The evil one wants not just to inflict pain, but to numb you to it, to distract you from it. But to be healed means to enter into our wounds with Jesus, and through his own, Jesus does the work to heal us. And so Jesus sees right through the lie that Martha has come to believe, that many of us have come to believe. Because Martha's statement makes two assumptions. Jesus doesn't care, and I'm doing this alone. It's all on me. Those are the assumptions. Her first question is, Jesus, don't you care? I'm doing this by myself. And so what if our chronic state of hurry is also a response out of fear that Jesus doesn't care and I'm actually all alone? No one's helping me. Because our busyness is, in general, a way of bargaining with the future, right? It's a way of making sure that we have everything we need, that the future is secure. We work more so that we have more time later to live out our ideas of what the good life looks like, right? If so, then everything we do becomes urgent and necessary in order to make sure that the future is secure. I've got to make sure that we have enough, that everything's taken care of so that we can have enough later. Everything becomes urgent and necessary. Not only that, but sometimes, as Brandon said in his call to worship, we create this identity based on our busyness. We become the ones who do take care of everything. And that makes us feel needed because people need things to be taken care of. People need to be fed. And so we're caught in this cycle of this is who I've become, but it makes me feel like I have worth and value and I'm needed. So everything becomes urgent in order to make sure the future is secure and I'm secure. Our busyness falls under the tyranny of the urgent when we begin to also feel resentment that others are not doing as much work as we do or noticing how much work we're doing. No one cares or notices, we say. I'm doing all the work, we say. Which can be exhausting because sometimes we are doing a lot of work. We are doing a lot, and it is exhausting. But our judgment and resentment towards others for not meeting our standards is not always because things did not get done, but when we see others rest, or their actions highlight our own ability to actually be able to control the future. And if I can't, then who can? If I don't do this, then who will? If I don't protect us, then who's going to keep us safe? If I don't feed the disciples, then, well, Mary's not going to do it. So we come home and are short with our spouse for wasting time taking care of the children or other things. Or we come home and we pull our child from their leisure after school because they didn't contribute to our job. Or we numb ourselves with sin or the internet or work in order to distract ourselves from the uncomfortable weight and exhaustion that we carry day to day. And it comes at the cost of precious time in the present with those that we love and who love us. Our schedules shape us more than we shape it. And it distracts us from what is real and what is right in front of us. And so our busyness turns into anxiety-driven hurry, and our schedules and standards for others reflect that. Martha believed that what Mary was doing, sitting at the feet of Jesus, was not as important as what she was doing. And so our schedules become filled with habits that push us on a trajectory that is always in the future, always on the next thing, at the cost of the present. But the challenge is that for a time, our anxiety and hurry does keep us safe from those uncomfortable feelings. It keeps you from having to address it or to talk about it. But the walls are not secure, and it is distracting you from what is real. Marcus Aurelius once said, or Russell Crowe in The Gladiator, "What we do now echoes in eternity." What we give our attention to, what we work toward, how we rest, how we speak, what fills and guides our schedules, shapes eternal parts of us, whether you realize it or not. Or as in Matthew 6:22, the eye is the lamp of the body. What we give our attention to directs the rest of us. And so I ask you, in what direction do your schedules take you? Where are you spending your time, your thought life, your money? When you find yourself being short, speaking unkindly, at your wits' end, burnt out, resentful, feeling like you're the only one who cares and the only one doing anything, when you don't have anything left, what are you distracting yourself from? Where is that pain? And how can Jesus meet you in that? And so Jesus speaks straight to Martha's soul. Martha, Martha, we have everything we need. It's all been taken care of. He goes on, I only need one thing. In fact, you need it too. It's right here. Mary has already chosen to do it, and no one can ever take it away from her. In other words, I care. It's already done. It's finished. Now, the Greek word for need here can also be demand, request, or need, and its structure could mean that Jesus is saying he only needs one thing, or that he has what Martha needs, or maybe both. Martha's serving everyone, meeting their needs, and just says, hey, I actually only need one thing, and it's also what you need. Mary's already doing it. What Jesus needs of Martha is also what Martha needs. And in this culture, it was something that Martha had come to believe was not for her. It's not appropriate for women to become disciples or to sit at the feet of Jesus. So how could Martha trust what Jesus was offering her right now? When she'd been told her whole life it was something she wasn't worthy of. And it was to sit at Jesus' feet. It is at the feet of Jesus that our lives become ordered in a Godward direction. If we could show the picture of just Jesus' feet. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of the messenger who brings good news. The good news of peace and salvation, and the news that the God of Israel reigns. When Jesus invites Mary and Martha to sit at his feet and to be his disciples, this is what he invites all of us to. To be invited by the voice of Jesus to receive the healing of his truth through his teachings and to be kept safe. No one can ever take it away from you. By his personal presence is to be invited to the foot of the cross. Sit at the feet of Jesus. Because Martha, when she finally slowed down, was able to ask Jesus her anxious question, Jesus, don't you care? Don't you care? Don't you care how hard I'm working? How exhausted I am? How long the day is? And this is a question that I ask often. I think that a lot of us ask, is that we're maybe too afraid to ask, because what if the answer is that he doesn't care, that he isn't there? That's the anxiety. If I don't do this, who will? And if Jesus doesn't care, then who does? And so what is it that Mary and Martha find at the feet of Jesus? First, at the feet of Jesus, our lives become ordered in a Godward direction by the voice of Jesus. The voice of Jesus on the cross, it is finished, echoes into the future. It's secure. It's taken care of. Jesus' voice disarms the tactic of the evil one to distract Martha from what was right in front of her. The evil one wishes not just to inflict pain, but to distract us from it, and he can do so through our schedules. So to slow down and to sit at the feet of Jesus means to halt our busyness, which brings all our fears and anxieties about the future up to the front. You are already not in control of the future or your formation, but we can become active participants in the work of the Spirit by slowing down. And one of the reasons we feel so restless as a culture is because when we do rest, our leisure is filled with distraction to avoid becoming uncomfortable. Maybe it feels too heavy to carry. Maybe you aren't sure if Jesus actually cares. This story is not telling us to stop working, but to slow down. Things do need to get done. God will not schedule your dentist appointment, but he is asking us to submit our fears and anxieties and schedules to him. And so Jesus calls to us through the stream of busyness and distraction and noise to come and sit with him. Jesus only wants one thing. God wants us to be with him, and God also wants to be with us. And so our schedules and daily habits move us in a Godward direction because it's at the feet of Jesus that the future, what we're always so anxious about, has been forever redirected in a Godward direction, and it's secure. But also it's at the feet of Jesus that our lies, told and received, are healed by the truth of Jesus. The lies we tell and perpetuate and the lies that the evil one speaks to us. And so as our schedules become free from the tyranny of urgency and busyness, our pain, fears, and lies will come to light. Martha had grown up her whole life being told that discipleship was not for her, and yet Jesus was offering it. Jesus' simple invitation disarmed the entire story that Martha was living in. And if you want to have a larger conversation about the implication of Jesus inviting these sisters to be his disciples and what this means for women in the church, I invite you to come to our Tuesday nights where we discuss our position paper on women in ministry. And I invite both men and women to sign up for that. But, as Jesus says in John 8:32, the truth will set you free. At Jesus' feet, Mary was being taught by Jesus. And so upon hearing the voice of Jesus, we learn the truth, what is real, what's right in front of us, how things are supposed to be. So it's at the cross that the teachings of Jesus release their final and victorious attack on the lies of the evil one, lies that we share, receive, and perpetuate. Through the wounds of the cross, Jesus speaks truth into the pain of the universe and the pain that we carry, and he invites us to come and be healed. The cross undoes the lies of our pain and wounds that the evil one seeks to distract us from. That no one cares, that you're alone and that it's all on you. It's at the foot of the cross that the bloody feet of Jesus show us the way towards true freedom, which is not being in control of the future. True freedom is being healed through the truth of Jesus. And this freedom also allows us to become healing agents to those that we meet along the way, who see through the lies and facades that the evil one's using in the lives of those that we love. And finally, at the feet of Jesus, our longings for true rest are heard and found in the presence of Jesus. Martha, Martha, I only want one thing and you only need one thing. Mary's already doing it. Well, what was Mary doing? Sitting at Jesus' feet. All Jesus wants is to be present with and for us, and for us to be present with him. If we're always distracted with the future, we may miss God sitting with us in the present. As one pastor and author once said, the only place that you can encounter God is right now. The only place we exist is in the present. Which means the only place we can experience God is right now. And if we're always living in the future, we might miss God sitting with us right now. The cross is not just how we get to God. It's also how God gets to us. It's at the foot of the cross that we experience Jesus' invitation, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Which is all of us. We're all weary and heavy laden from trying to control what is not ours to control, from the pain of the lies and sin in our life. It's heavy being a human. But when we slow down, when we're still, we're no longer distracted by what is not real. Which now that AI is out, I can say most of what's on the internet is probably not real. We can finally be still and know what is real. Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. That's what's real. And so to conclude, if we could also again show just the picture of Jesus' feet. Our leisure is challenging because it forces us to address the reality of where we're at in our lives, the lies we believe and live in, the pain and anxiety of just existing. Our rest gives us anxiety because we're in need of good rest. Now, we all know the importance of good sleep. Turning the lights off in your house or soft lights on, not being on your phone before bed, not absorbing divisive or anxious material before bed. But even if you miss 1 hour of sleep, it can take you over a week of good sleep to catch up and make up for that 1 hour. But even on one bad night of sleep, it can affect our mood and our relationships and our health, which become more and more apparent over time the less that we rest and have good sleep. So time with Jesus is to the soul what sleep is to the body. Time with Jesus is to our soul, who we are becoming, what sleep is to our bodies. We're not aware of what happens to us when we sleep. Our bodies recover and we rest and we heal. And when we get good sleep, we wake up ready to be present to what is actually real. So it is with time with Jesus. We're not always going to be aware of what's happening to us. And so slowing down means becoming nothing to our schedules, standards, and anxieties. In other words, it means letting go of our control and offering up our anxieties about who will get things done and entering into the unknown of our pain with Jesus. To sit at Jesus' feet is to be his disciple, and what he says to his disciples is, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Take up their pain, their sin, and follow Jesus. To sit at the feet of Jesus is to watch our pain, anxiety, and lies be told. and healed by Jesus, which can be terrifying because who am I when I'm not busy or always providing or taking care of things or doing all of this? The unknown is much scarier than what is known, even if painful. And so if the question is, does Jesus actually care? Jesus, don't you care? We don't know. That's scary. John 3:30, John the Baptist says, "He must increase, but I must decrease." Take up our pain and sit with Jesus at the foot of the cross, where he secures the future. Where God comes to us as much as we get to God through the cross. Where he invites us to participate in his work of healing the world, of being neighbors to whoever shows up. But it begins with us sitting at his feet and being healed. And so just a few questions. As you guys try to slow down, first is, what kind of resistance arises when I try to sit at the feet of Jesus? Where's my resistance? What is it telling me that I need or that I want? What is it protecting me from? 2, how can I daily create space to rest and trust in the hands of Jesus? So that 3, I can ask the question, how can I be a generous neighbor who daily sits at the feet of Jesus and creates space for others to also find rest there? To be nothing according to our fears, to decrease, to deny ourselves, to our fears, standards, schedules, strengths, desires, is to open ourselves up to the voice of Jesus that I believe echoes from creation onward to transform us into who he has for us to be. And it begins with stillness. Because in the beginning, when the stillness of nothing heard the voice of God, it responded by becoming everything. And so when we become still, it's the voice and words and teachings of Jesus that invite us to be still and know and to become who God has for us to be, to resist the lies of the evil one. To be nothing to the lies of this world is to open ourselves up to simply just being loved by God. When we sit at the feet of Jesus, when we sit with Jesus and nothing else, Jesus ceases to be this haphazard collection of inaccurate ideas and theological positions. And he becomes a person, through whom and in whom all things were loved into existence, and who lovingly offers us healing and salvation and rest from the lies and the burdens of sin in this world. And through that enables us to be agents of healing and rest to whoever we come across. Will we continue to turn inward to the lies of the evil ones that echoes from the roots of that cursed tree? That you will be like God? Or will we turn in the direction of the voice of Jesus, who hangs on that cursed tree and echoes to us from eternity? Again, time with Jesus is to the soul what sleep is to the body. And so I encourage you to slow down and find at least 5 minutes a day, just not a long time. Just sit at the feet of Jesus. Offer him everything that you have, that he might make you into who he has for you to be. And if your schedule can't fit 5 minutes, then you're doing too much. Martha, Martha, you're doing too much. I only need one thing, and you also need it. And so, to close, I'm going to read a poem I wrote. A few weeks ago, I went on a walk just trying to sit with the passage and let it be what it was. And as I was sitting in this park, these crows started cawing, and it was really distracting and annoying and frustrating. And I was just like, it was really loud. But then as I was thinking through this passage with that distracting noise in the background, this poem came to light. And so I just want to share it with you, because it's a prayerful response to me just sitting with this passage. And so if, I forgot her name, I'm sorry. Christina wants to come back up as I read this. What do they see, the crows who speak, talking over the trees and whisper of the creek? I'm swimming in tall pine, ponderosa, and madrone, a holy wasting of time. To learn from the stones who do nothing and give nothing. As it was in the beginning, I am nothing. And as it was in the beginning, nothing became something. What do they say, the crows who speak? What does it mean, the whispering creek? And what do they teach, the stones that lay? Be still and know that God is. And so if you would pray with me. Lord, we thank you for the invitation to come and sit at your feet. That the cross is not just how we get to you, but also how you come to us. That you speak to our longings for true rest. I pray that you would give us all space and capacity and courage to find time to sit with you, that we might experience your love and be generous with that love for others. That to those to whom love is a stranger would find in us generous friends.